I was born on a farm south of Boone, Iowa, February the 11th, 1923. I don't remember much about my childhood, except my mother told me that I was a premature baby, and they made me a bed on in a box and set me on the oven door to keep me warm. I'm glad they didn't close the oven door. Other thing that I remember especially was I wanted to grow some eggplant, and I took a bunch of eggs and planted them in the yard, and my mother never did find the eggs, and I didn't get any eggplants.
Whenever trouble comes your way, let it be an opportunity for joy. For when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow.
I went to grade school in a one-room schoolhouse, and we had a teacher that was a strict disciplinarian. And I remember we couldn't even whisper, and a boy came that was raised up in the iron mines of northern Minnesota, and he informed us that he was going to show us how to run this school. And he did the first day. He raised Cain. And the second morning when we come to school, the schoolhouse also, in this one-room school, they had a little platform. And on the front, they held the teacher's desk and 4 or 5 chairs. And she would have classes there, and she had 8 grades to teach. And she called him up front and took a hold of his arm and reached in her desk and got a belt. And she went whomp, 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 and they went round and round and round. He never did cry, but he was an embarrassed boy, I'll tell you. And he behaved. He was a model student from that time on. We rode ponies to school in the winter. The snow was would snow so much in Minnesota, and we lived in what they called the snow belt, and it would snow. They didn't open the roads in the winter, and the snow would pile up over the fences, and we could ride straight to school. It was a neat time in the spring when somebody bring a spreader, and all of us would group together and we'd clean the building out. School always started the same way in the mornings. We sang the Minnesota State song, and we said the Pledge of Allegiance, and and from that point on we behaved. When we went to high school, we rode the ponies in the winter the same way, and walked to school in the summer. It was interesting. to go to town, we had a bobsled. Everybody had a bobsled and a team of horses. And the snow would freeze so hard that the horses could walk on top of the snow. And we'd go to town cross country in the bobsled. The only thing about a bobsled, if you didn't do things about right, it would turn over. And in the spring, when it would start to thaw, why a runner of the sled would break through, and over we'd go. And a great time had by the kids. A terrible time by the guy driving the team. I don't remember much more about my school years, with the exception that we moved to southern Iowa, and I went my senior year to a school at Leon, Iowa, and we went to a country church there. In fact, the church was on the corner of my parents' farm, and that's where I met Blanche. And I went with her a few times, and I asked her to marry me. She said no. And that was a wise decision on her part, I'll tell you. And of course, the war had started. I was 18 years old in February, and so I enlisted. And my life changed drastically at that time, I'll tell you. I remember in pre-flight why we learned how to stand at attention and how to keep our things neat and dusted, and we learned to behave ourselves 100%. And I remember while we were there, I think it was about a 6-week stunt, and I remember the last day. This was a girls' college that we were stationed at in Denton, Texas, and the school had a ball for us, and they gave us numbers. We weren't allowed off the premises, but they gave us numbers, and I remember my number, and then a girl up above, and they had a big winding staircase, and these girls would come down the staircase after you called their number, and here come my girl down, and no kidding, she was from Texas, and I'll bet she was 7 foot tall. And we just stood at each other and laughed. Had a nice evening with her. We visited a lot and ate our dinner together. It was fun. We shipped out from there and went to San Antonio, Texas, and I went to Kelly Field, and we took our training, started to take our training there. I remember I had a fellow from Danish man who was from Denmark, and he talked terribly broken. Well, I was used to that because I was raised in the Swedish community in Minnesota, and a lot of the kids had a lot of trouble with him because they couldn't understand him, but I got along fine that way with him. But I remember he took me up, and we done a spin, and when you pull out of a spin, they told us to hit the cowling with a stick and put it in a dive, and I put the stick to the cowling, and I didn't pull her back. And when I did pull it back, I mean, my eyes came down to my belt, I think, and we had a mirror in there, of course, so we could watch him as in a tandem airplane, open cockpit. And when I looked, his mouth was open and his false teeth were down on his bottom, and he was not happy with me, I'll tell you for sure. And the other experience I had with him, I started the plane up, and he hadn't got in it yet, and I don't know what he was doing back behind it, and I threw a little throttle to it and dusted him off, and so I got to climb out of the airplane, and he dusted me for a half an hour, I think. And them things really throw rocks, I'll tell you. I got my wings and became a second lieutenant, and I always remember walking downtown in San Antonio, and the enlisted men would salute us, and it was something new for us. And I remember my buddy saying, I wonder what the poor people are doing. We found out before long. We flew fighters, and most of our missions, I was in the 9th Air Force, and most of our missions were not bombers. They had B-26 bombers, and they were a very speedy, maneuverable plane, and so they didn't need to escort. And I don't think they had any heavy bombers in the 9th. They were all in the 8th Air Force. And we were on a mission to Eindhoven, Holland, and the country was all covered with timber, and a few little spots here and there that was been cleared off. And as we were going across there, I picked up an 88, I think, and it took the front end of the plane off and also part of the right wing. And I was going to crash, I knew, and it was too low to get out. So when I cried out to God when I was going down to save me, and a feeling of peace came over me, and I'd never had a feeling like that before. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to die. When I hit the ground, it was in Holland, that land is all soggy, and the plane sunk in a ways, I think, and I always tell people I dug a new canal up through Holland. I got away from the plane and run as hard as I could and got in this timber, and when I got in quite a ways, I got terribly sick, and so I laid down, and I slept there that night, and I must have slept most of the next day, and I slept the next night there. So I thought and I was close to a German gun emplacement, and the British were not too far away, and they were trying to hit that gun emplacement. And I remember seeing the leaves, the shrapnel would take the leaves off the trees, but I never got any shrapnel from it. I did get some, one piece of shrapnel went across my forehead, and so it made me, when you hurt your forehead like that, I was bloody all over. And but I decided that after I'd stayed there those 2 nights, I decided I had to get away from there for sure. And so I walked and seemed like forever. And I came to another clearing, and I'd say it's about 40 acres. And there was a little house in one corner. And I walked up to where it was cleared off, and I thought to myself, I can't walk around and stay in that timber. I'm going to go straight across like I owned it. And I started across, and I didn't get, I suppose 400 or 500 feet out, maybe not that far. And I seen 4 or 5 guys standing outside that house, and they were going this way to me. And so I thought the show was over. Well, I went over there, and they told me that they were the underground, and they were going to take care of me. They did. They took me out to they made me stay out in the timber and sleep 2 more nights. I think they were watching me to see if I was being watched by the Germans. And but I did have blankets, and I wasn't cold. And then in the afternoon, they came with a 2-wheel cart and a team of horses, a load of corn fodder on it, and they loaded me in the cart, covered me over with the fodder, and away we went. And when we got to town, they backed in a barn and unloaded me. And then when it got dark at night, they carried me into this building. It was a large building, and took me up to a little room. It was 3 or 4 stories high, and took me up to a little room there. And that's where I stayed for the next 30 days. They kept me, I wasn't to stick my head out the door, and I didn't. And there was 2 nuns that came every day and doctored me. And the interesting thing was they had no medicine, and they rubbed me down with sheep fat, and that made the swelling go down in my back and my hands and my feet, and it worked good. And I always thought I was in a Catholic cloister with the sisters, because they always came that day, every day, and sometimes, quite often, twice a day at the beginning. And then a priest came to see me every day, and I remember saying to him when I was getting a little better and started to get arrogant again, I guess, I said, "You're going to live here all the rest of your life here?" And he said, "No, I hope to go to Africa to be a missionary." Well, I found out later they did go to Africa. He did, and but it took him another 10 years to get it done. There was a big fellow I should tell you about that carried me all the time in the beginning, because I couldn't walk and I almost couldn't move, and he just picked me up in his arms and carried me like a baby, and he carried me a lot, I'll tell you. Well, after I got to feeling pretty good, real good, why, they had always told us after we'd been there if you were with the underground for 30 days, to plan on leaving them, because you was a danger to them and to yourself too. And so I told them I wanted to leave. And we were right on the Willamina Canal, and the British were on the other side of the canal, and that's where the gunfire was coming for the gun emplacement. And I was going to swim over to the British, and they gave me an Old May West. That was a flotation device that they put in airplanes, and they gave me one of them, and I walked down to the Willamina Canal, and I started to swim across. And somebody shot up a flare. I don't know whether it was the British or the Germans, but both sides shot at me. And I made it back to the bank real quick, and I never had a touched with a bullet. And I ran back into the house, and they followed me in. And of course I was captured, and they put me in a truck. And well, the first night they kept me in a house there, and then they put me in a truck, and they had a guard with me, an older fellow. I don't suppose he was very old, but I thought he was old. And I always remember he asked me, he said he used to live in Chicago, and that he wondered if they had Copenhagen snus and Wrigley spearmint gum. And so I guess he really was from Chicago. And anyway, we went to Dachau, and I had no idea where I was at, and I had never heard of Dachau. And but I knew it was a terrible, terrible place. There were all kinds of people there, it seemed like, and they were sick people and dying people and dead people. And the only thing that was growing and multiplying there was the lice. And I always said I had enough lice to give a big congregation a pair. They each day they would interrogate me, and they beat me with a rifle. The guard would come and get me, and he beat me with his rifle. And we'd go down, and they always had told us that if it was an officer, to salute him and give him full military respect. And I would go to every day I saluted that fellow, and every day when I did, he'd get up, walk around, and slap my face and spit on me. I love him. after one day, it started out the same way. I was there quite a while, and they never tattooed me or done anything like that to me. No food, and I was in a solitary confinement in a little room. I suppose it was could have been 5-6 foot wide and maybe 7 foot long, maybe 8 foot long. Had a bed and a can in the corner for a latrine, and that's where they kept me and I stayed there every day. And but one day they came and he gave me a good going over with his rifle, and we went out to a dock outside, and there was myself and 2 British pilots and a paratrooper, airborne, and they took and put us on a train, and I remember the old train, they'd go forward and then go backwards and then forwards, and I guess it went forward more than it went backward, because we finally got up to Stalag Luft 3. That's where the Great Escape took place. And when we were going there on the train, one little incident that happened, wasn't little. The SS boys would get up on crawl up into the boxcar we were in, and I don't know what this paratrooper could really talk fluent in German, and they got into awfulest argument. They were shaking their fists at each other, and they took him outside the door and shot him. And but I do remember one thing kind of amusing today, when we went through Frankfurt, Germany, and in those days when you didn't have anything else to do, why they sent you over Frankfurt to blow the rubble around. And some guy, bombardier, had toggled his bombs across the cemetery, and there was a casket standing right straight up. And to this day, at the time I wondered, was he standing on his head or his feet? I don't know. That's how a person's mind works sometimes. And we arrived at Stalag Luft 3, and it was a palace to what it was at Dachau. And they had rooms, and they did have, I think they had 12 men to a room, not very big. And you slept 4 high in bunks on 3 sides. And they had a table, and then our rations were very limited, and they give us, they always had their famous cabbage soup with not much cabbage, and they had stuff called blood sausage, and that was plentiful like the lice. The boys from America couldn't eat that stuff, and so that was not in great demand. There was lots of it. We were allowed a Red Cross parcel once a week for the 12 men. That Red Cross parcel was supposed to be 1 a week per man, but we had 1 a week for 12 men. And you had to take your turn in dividing up the food. And you had a whole bunch of eyes looking at you as you sliced that food out. And then everybody else got to take their choice, and you got what was left. And they had cigarettes and toothpaste and fish, canned fish, and a D-bar, and that was a chocolate bar, a real heavy chocolate bar of candy, and a very popular item. It was worth more than money. And lived like that we were lucky. We had a fellow, I smoked then, and we had a fellow in our group that was a great poker player. And he played, when he got up in the morning, the first thing he done, he started a poker game. And guys would come in and try and beat him, and they used cigarettes for money. And there was also cigarettes in this Red Cross parcel. And so we always had, he was a tremendous poker player, and we always had lots of cigarettes. We didn't have to worry about that. Then towards the end of I was at Dachau on Thanksgiving, I know that. And I know I was at Stalag Luft 3 Christmas time, and they knew the war was coming to an end, and they had put up a speaker. There was 4 compounds in this camp, and they put up a speaker, and they opened the gate up and let us go from one compound to the other that time. And I always remember standing and crying and listening to Bing Crosby sing White Christmas. Then one day, on the 29th day of January, they came and told us we were moving out. And we had watched, and we could see that Breslau, Poland we were right west of it, not too far, and we could see the fire of the Russians taking Breslau. And they started us on a walk. We were supposed to walk to Berlin, and then Hitler was going to have them execute us. But the old soldiers, the old officers knew that the war was over, and they disobeyed and turned south, and we started for Munich. The first day we walked, that day, that night, the next day, and then to the next evening without sleeping or stopping. If you stopped or sat down, they shot you. And I seen one young boy shot. And I was so tired and so depressed, and I thought, I'm going to sit down. And about the time I was really thinking that over strong, we pulled into a Polish slave labor camp, and they were cleaning railroad cars. I remember walking in, as we was walking into this settlement of them, they had dug holes in the banks where the railroad track, they'd graded up for the railroad track. And there was a young girl, I remember so well, a young girl, and she was holding they had a big bonfire built, and she was holding a little baby. And so while I was standing there and deciding whether I wanted to sit down, there was here stood a girl in front of me, and she had a glass or a cup of hot spiced wine, and I drank it, and I no more desire to kill myself, not at all. Regarding the slave labor girl and me drinking the hot wine and looking back on all that, I would have to ask, where on earth would a Polish slave girl get a glass of hot spiced wine? I had a little interesting thing happen from that experience. Was I know that was an angel, and my wife and I were camping up in Rocky Mountain National Forest, and they were a Polish couple and their daughter that set up a tent right outside our camper, Blanche was talking to them, and she found out they were from Poland, and and then she had me go talk to them, and I told them about being there, and that girl giving me. And I said, I think it was an angel. I don't believe it was a Polish girl. And she said, oh yes, it was a Polish girl. Polish girls are awfully nice. And they was looking for a place for us to sleep, and they was making brick in this area, and we slept up above a brick kiln. And I remember the dust up there was about 4 or 5 inches thick, and we laid down on that, and it was warm, real warm, and got thawed out and dried off a good deal. A little dirty, but well, that was a good deal. And then they marched us, and we got in boxcars. That was another terrible experience. They packed us in like sardines, and of course somebody would always get sick, and then you had no place to go. You couldn't, and it was an awful mess. And that's the way we rode. No food. And then we finally got to where they unloaded us, and we started to march again. And we walked and walked and walked, but we didn't have a forced march like we had to start with. And we finally came to Stalag 7A. And it was a very big, I might add that the big prisoner of war camp at Stalag Luft 3, there were 12,000 American airmen there. And at this Stalag 7A, there was every kind of human being you'd ever seen in your life that they had captured over the years. And we were all in a big puddle of people. And they had built latrines, and they were just a big, long concrete tank, probably 200 or 300 foot long, and they had just holes in them, and we would stand up there and listen to Patton was coming, and we could hear with that drum effect. We'd stand there and listen to them coming. Well, Patton did show up, and they wanted to go out and negotiate with Patton. So they took the commanding officer, American officer there, who was a colonel that had was captured, and took him, and they went in a Jeep with a white flag and went out to meet Patton. And Patton said, I don't trade. I'll be after you in the morning. And he kept his word. And there's quite a rise in the ground there, kind of a hill, and it kind of sloped down into the prison camp. And here come his tanks up over that hill and down. And there was a big main gate with built up and had guards up there. Of course, there's guards in those deals all over the place, but this was really a big one. And at the main gate, and I wondered, what are they going to do when they come to the gate? They never even slowed down, and they hit that thing with a tank, and it went a-flying, and Germans went every which way. And they come on in, and immediately you couldn't see the tank anymore. It was covered with human beings. And we were so happy to see them, you know. But they were still shooting around there, and there was an English pilot who had been a prisoner for 5 years, and he was climbing up on the fence and cheering them on, and he got hit. But it wasn't serious, and so he didn't get to go home, but he got to go to the hospital. But he was in good shape. And a kid that was there with us, he was having an appendicitis attack, and it was interesting. There was these Indians with the big turbans, and one of them was lighting matches in this kid's face to scare away the spirit, so that he would get cured, you know. Well, of course, that wouldn't cure him, but there was an intelligence officer with Patton who came in and looking for his brother, and he found him, and of course, they took him to the hospital, operated on him. But I never did get over that guy lighting matches. And another funny thing there was the Turks. And the Germans didn't monkey with the Turks. And they, every morning that we were there, they would have close order drill. I couldn't believe it. And boy, the Germans stood and watched them. And this one German said, soldier said, if they had knives, they could cut your head off and it'd be clear off before you even knew it. So they didn't tinker with them. And a real funny thing was, they came every day in an old truck, and the old truck run on coke, and the coke, and of course the engine had no power, and they would load up that latrine, the stuff out of the latrine, pump it into this dump truck, and when it was always the same thing, a German soldier with a gun and the Russian soldier with the hose. And when Patton come in, here they come the next morning, same two guys. The Russian had the gun and the German had the hose. It was interesting to see. General Patton did come in and walk through the camp, and he walked up to close to me, and he said to me, "Soldier, where's your bed?" And I said, "I don't have one, sir." And he said, "Them SOBs," only he didn't say SOB. That's the last I saw of him. They moved in ovens and food and fed us, and I remember the bread they baked, the white bread looked like angel food cake. From there we were flown back to Le Havre, France, and then we came home on a ship, and I got home, and me and Blanche got back together, and we were married. I had a 90-day leave, and so we stayed there at home. I was terribly nervous, and had a terrible time sleeping, and I still sweat from those experiences, and lacked a long ways of being fun. Blanche and I bought a farm, and we lived on the farm for 7 years, and then sold the farm, and I went to driving a truck, and I drove a truck for 13 years. And then went into the insurance business. I was an insurance counselor for the Western Electric Company, which no longer exists, but really was the telephone company. And we raised 3 children, and I got 7 grandchildren and 3 great-grandchildren. And that's about the end of my story.